I think a lot of people did not really expect a
Ok,
lot
ok,
of
estamos
kind
en
of the
línea,
mid-range
sí,
decks, which
estamos
play
en
Ardent
línea.
Tyrant, which is a fantastic way to just kind of punish
Ahora
these
entonces
creature,
estamos
sorry, these
haciendo
control
el
decks, and
comentario
Detection Tower gives you
de
kind of an
cómo
out to
del
hexproof
invitacional,
creatures.
¿no?
However,
Del invitacional,
you know,
del
not a lot of
mítico
people
de
bring
Magic de que
Carnage
tiene en
Tyrant to the
arena.
tournament, so not a card that
Estamos
you
viendo el
necessarily
deck
are
de
going
uno
to
de
get
los
often,
de un
but
Esper
at the same
Control,
time, keep in mind, you have
un Esper
15
Control
cards to choose from. If you get that
blanco,
card just
azul.
once, it was worth it.
A spoiled for choice. Taking a look now at the Esper Acuity list of
Y el
the
otro
Asian
es también un
Avenger.
Esper Control,
We saw this in
que
action
es
yesterday in a
básicamente un
mirror, the Esper Acuity mirror,
blanco azul
and that game
splash
could have gone a
negro.
lot longer than it did.
Splash negro.
Yeah, the
Sí.
Esper Acuity mirror specifically is quite silly. We saw Kowalski choosing to Mastermind's acquisition for Unmoored Ego to name the opponent's Mastermind's acquisition, because if you look in the main deck the main configuration here, there's really no actual way to win the game. You're really leaning on the Mastermind's acquisition to get you ways to win the game. Of course,
Vamos a ver qué
Asian Avenger
Esper
never
Control
leaving home with the
pues
two
es que,
copies of the
bueno, tal vez el
East cover-up that
Immortal
he
Son que
has
tiene
in the main deck, but the Esper
Teas
Acuity
en
deck is a
Avenger
deck that's designed
le
to
puede
be
ayudar
aggressive.
bastante. Bueno, Teferi
Aggressive
es
decks.
Teferi,
Of the two Esper
Big
control
Black
decks,
Dick.
the Acuity deck has access to all that additional life gain. Playing cards
Tenemos
like
el
Revitalize,
Des
Goaded
Reborn,
Acuity.
definitivamente
This is
gran,
the deck that he
gran
wants
carta,
to
pero
play
ese es el side.
against the mono-red burn deck
Tenemos todo
that
en el
Kowalski
side,
has
lo
brought
del
to the table.
Alright, so when we
Igo,
do see the
increíble
opening
carta.
hands of the players, we'll know
Nerjas al
that they're
primo del Tide
stressing
también.
just a little bit, hoping that they get the favorable matchups. Taking a look now at the head-to-head,
Started
Piotr Glogowski having started playing in
2012,
2012
started en
and
2001.
Avenger 2001.
Mythic
That is a lot
Championships
of years of
9,
magic.
Mythic Championships 0,
Yeah, the
Lifetime
Asian Avenger has been
Arena
playing for
Games
quite some time. As you can
880,
see,
Lifetime Arena
because
Games
of the fact that he is a
4604
streamer, you
juegos.
see that hefty number of
Mono Blue
lifetime
Tempo,
arena games.
Mono
Of
Red
course,
Agro
Glogowski
y Esper
might
Control
only see
y Esper
870 arena
Acuity.
games here,
Yeah,
but he's got
he's seen 9 Mythic Championships.
Of course, 9 Mythic Championships and tons of games under his belt. Just playing on tabletop and all sorts of other things. So Glogowski, no stranger here, and he's just been very impressive at the highest levels of competition.
All right, taking a look now at the
Vamos a
opening
ver,
hands.
vamos a ver
Glogowski is on the mono blue tempo with a pretty good opening hand. Miscloaked Herald into Curious Obsession turn 2. Maybe.
Vamos a ver.
And taking a look now at the
Tenemos
Asian
un
Avengers
Godless
hand.
Shrine,
This is the Esper
ahí
Acuity
tenemos
list.
3 tierras,
With 3
el
mana
Revitalize
sources
para
in hand,
robar
all 3
carta,
colors. Also looking pretty good.
Down para
and
matar
very
el primer
importantly,
bicho,
having one
Moment
the
of
shock lines in
Craving
hand to turn on the
y
isolated chapel
Mastermind's
and the
Acquisition.
Catacomb. And I think if you talk about how you want to break down the matchups, this is actually in favor of Glogowski, because Glogowski did not want to run his mono red deck into the deck that's playing 4 copies of Revitalize.
No,
so
definitely not.
This is kind of how he wanted the matchup to break. Of course, currently he's still not sure what deck the Asian Avenger's playing because he brought 2 Esper decks. You won't know until you see that Dovin's Acuity or the Revitalize.
All right, so making quick work of the Miscloaked Herald before any counter spells are available.
Vamos a ver cómo actúa ese mono blue, ¿no?
Yeah.
Now we'll see possibly the Siren Storm Tamer. I call her Susie. Siren Storm Tamer hitting the board. Pesky card. This thing does so much.
Oh, absolutely.
Porque los polacos eran tan buenos para jugar esta vaina.
It's the 1-mana 1/1 flyer, but not only that, it has the ability, as you can see on the screen here, you can sacrifice the Storm Tamer to protect some of your other creatures. So it's an additional source of protection for a creature with Curious Obsession, or just even protecting
Tiene
your
la sirena que
On top of that, it's a wizard, which allows you to use the cost reduction effect of Wizard's Retort to get it to be basically UU counter target spell.
Es su turno.
So
baja
an
tierra
emote battle going on
y
the board,
baja
as well
el
as this actual
Tempest
matchup.
Jin.
Battle of the Trolls, I love it.
Yep. Like I know your game
Tienes
plan.
4
I'm gonna
tierras,
mess
tienes
with
el
your mind
Mastermind.
just as you've been doing to your other
Buscas una
opponents.
carta.
Mastermind's acquisition now for the Asian Avenger.
Y
What
vas a
do you go
buscar-
digging for here?
I would
Podría
look to go
buscar-
for some kind
bueno,
of
sí,
cheap
podría
removal
ser
spell,
el
but it doesn't look like
Des
he has one in
Reborn.
his deck. I think he just instinctively
Lyra.
just gone for this,
Oh,
went
Lyra
for the
da un
sideboard
bringer,
here.
okay.
There, of course, Mastermind's acquisition.
No
you
hubiera
can
sido
use
mi
local
opción,
cards
pero si
in
lo escogió
your
así.
main configuration.
Yes.
So if you wanted a cheaper spot removal spell, you could have just done that instead. But opting to go for big Lyra Dawnbringer, because if that does resolve, that does a really good job of just blocking all the flyers in this deck. However, now, Glogowski has Glogowski.
¡Ay, papá! Tu encantamiento y pegas y robas.
Was. If he knew that it was something like a Lyra Dawnbringer, he's just going to go ahead and
Y
keep up
robaste un
counter magic.
Surge
At the moment, though, he is considering, do I run out the Terramanda or the
Ey,
Surge
ese mono
No, I
azul
would
está
rather
chévere.
fake a Quench, for example. but no such card in Glogowski's hand, and Lyra Dawnbringer is going to resolve.
Yeah, Lyra Dawnbringer is going to resolve. Currently, the Tempestion is smaller, but keep in mind, Glogowski has a second copy of Curious Obsession in hand, meaning that the Tempestion is going to be a 5/6. It will be able to attack through that Lyra Dawnbringer and draw Glogowski 2 cards. Glogowski really needs to find, however, land number 3 just to make sure that he has the mana to cast Wizard's Retort in hand, and he does not find it.
He does find, however, a Merfolk Trickster, which can make the Wizard's Retort cheaper. So we'll probably see that on an end step, possibly turning off, or maybe even during the attack phase, turning off Lyra Dawnbringer's abilities.
Right. And the Asian Avenger does have another Mastermind's Acquisition. But keep in mind, that is the downside of playing something like Mastermind's Acquisition. We saw the power of the card in the last match with Matt Nass basically back against the wall and using basically that was the only card that he could draw to get him out of this. However, it is a bit slow. Even if he used Mastermind's Acquisition to get a 2-mana removal spell, that's 6 mana to deal with the threat on the battlefield.
So Devon Security hitting the board now, as the Asian Avenger would have been able to pay the cost off of Spell Pierce. Draws a card.
El coste del Spell Pierce.
And now considering which land I need next, what is my mana combination?
Yeah. And the Asian Avenger, because he doesn't have a removal spell, probably just wants to fire off a Revitalize here, use all the mana that he can, use it to draw a card, and bounce that Dovin's Acuity in hand.
So Glogowski now Spell Piercing.
Spell Pierce, págale 2 más.
The better target there, or the only target, I should say. And still not finding the 4th mana.
And that was a great draw from Glogowski. He drew Siren Stormtamer, which now gives him an additional layer of protection for the Tempestion. And on top of that, he gets the cost reduction effect from the 2 Wizard's Retorts that he has in hand, because he now has a Wizard on the battlefield.
Also drawing Islands 4 and 5, which will just help him access more of the cards that he has available in his hand a lot easier.
Yeah, and this is truly, you get to see the power of this mono blue deck. When you do resolve the creature and you do get to untap and have those protection spells ready, you just feel like it just kind of feels unfair from the other side. It's like, hey, come on, I'm playing Lyra Dawnbringer and look at you just playing all these cheap counter spells. 2 mana counter target spell, that's not fun, come on.
So Mastermind's Acquisition now, the go-to possibly for the Asian Avenger. Want to go digging around in that toolbox to find something else, but the Wizard's Retort ×2 available for Glogowski.
Yeah, there is no real card here for the Asian Avenger because Glogowski has multiple Wizard's Retorts along with Siren Stormtamer to protect that gigantic Tempestion with double Curious Obsession on it currently.
Now, I can't exactly remember the deck list, but are there any board wipes, any clears, any wraths in this list?
A ver, un board wipe que tiene board wipe este man.
I'm not sure there's a Kaya's Wrath, or is there?
Well, we are looking through the deck here, but he can certainly look for a Mortify. But he does have Kaya's Wrath, of course, an Esper control deck wants to play sweepers here. Right. But we all know that there's a handful of counterspells in Glogowski's hand, so Glogowski at this point, look at him. Look at how comfortable he looks.
Tiene un Wizard Retort en la mano, bueno, tiene que hacerle gastar.
Think about his Game 2 matchup here.
Dovin's Acuity now threatening to hit the board. Glogowski deciding, do I want to let this resolve?
At this point, he's thinking, okay, how am I going to win this game? There's so many different ways. Debating whether or not he wants to counter the Dovin's Acuity. Doesn't really need to.
Oh.
Instead, opting to play the Merfolk Trickster and tap Lyra Dawnbringer, removing all of her abilities. So no life gain there off of the Angel for the Asian Avenger.
And I'm not sure how many spells the Glogowski has in his graveyard, but he can adapt onto the Terramander and attack for lethal if he does have the mana to do so.
Sí, no,
we're looking currently at 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 damage.
Claro, los van a prender re duro, salven la vida.
That's all he needs to do as the Asian Avenger is tapped out.
Let's see if he has enough for it. Seemingly not yet. Terramander, of course, lowering his adapt cost for the number of spells in the graveyard.
Asian Avenger firing off the good game emote there as Glogowski says thinking, but honestly at this point you don't really need to think to figure out a way to win
marica, que lo está
transmitiendo. Sí, marica, lo estoy transmitiendo. Nope. Whatever Asian Avenger attempts to cast here will possibly get countered.
Sí, parce, lo estoy comentando, pues no sé, lo estoy viendo ahí por ratos.
And look at this Asian Avenger looking to maybe go after a Curious Obsession here because Siren Stormtamer does have the ability to protect the Tempestion, but I think you can't really afford to do that. I think you just have to kind of hope that somehow Glogowski misses
que tengo que enviar
the opportunity to counter the Mortify or even protect the Tempest Chain with the Cyber
Salga,
Storm
puto.
Tamer.
No, espérese que estoy viendo el
invitacional,
hermano.
There is, of course, 2 more Wizard's Retorts in the hand of Glogowski.
Viendo el invitacional, mano.
Open Security will return to hand.
No puedo salir todavía, viejo Gabo. ¿Qué pasa? Espere que saca el invitacional. No, y es que esta noche tengo toque. Entonces, estoy relajando un suave.
Even if your card gets countered, you will still be able to bounce the Dovin Executia back into your hand and resolve it at some point later in the game.
All right. So the Asian Avenger possibly hoping to be able to play the Dovin Executia yet again. Gonna have a little bit of a tricky time here.
Mortify.
Cross your fingers, David.
Oh, cancelo.
I'm sure this is. No,
it'll
this is
be
not
fine.
It'll
be fine. He's just thinking, no, it'll be all right. Don't worry, I've got this. It's not looking great now for the Asian Avenger. This army of blue dudes flying in at his face.
Se lo mandó fue al encantamiento y no al Tempest de Jin.
Mortify. Lyra can block the
biggest
qué
excelente jugada, pero no, igual no le sirvió porque igual le hizo el counter. O sea, igual iba a hacer el counter. Bueno, pero sobrevivió un turno.
Attacks with all the creatures here, and at this point, the Asian Avenger, at least to himself, is thinking, I need to draw Kaya's Wrath. But we all know that that's not going to do it with the Wizard's Report in Glogowski's hand.
Survives a turn, but a whole hand to land ain't gonna do it.
No, papá.
Bye-bye. Conceding there to Glogowski, who picks up the first win in this win-and-in game here at the Mythic Invitational.
And Glogowski keeping the hopes and dreams of all the people who enjoy playing Mono Blue Tempo alive. The singular deck, 1 out of 128 deck submissions. Mono Blue Tempo, and you know,
it's been
impressive every time we've seen it on camera.
El buen Mono Blue Tempo.
Yeah, we even spoke about it yesterday, thinking or
buen deck.
Contemplating about what this deck will do to mess up everyone else's game plans, because it is the one of.
Right.
It possibly can outpace the Esper decks. Obviously, that's what it wants to do, but it also has the backup of having really big creatures on the board, as well as the counter spells to protect them also.
Right, and at this point, you don't even see that deck very much on the ladder. So, you know, there is even that smaller element of players not necessarily being as familiar playing against the deck on top of that. And Glogowski also made some pretty heads-up adjustments to the deck.
A ver qué ajustes le va a hacer. Bueno, qué sites le van a meter.
Okay. To make sure that all of his cards are live in the Esper control matchup.
All the bases covered for whatever he might encounter. Now going into game 2, we will see the Esper control versus the mono red matchup.
Yeah, and this is the type of matchup where you know,
bueno, tiene dos decks, entonces podías coger uno o el otro deck, o sea, bueno, eso es creo que una ventaja en la invitacional, porque eso no se puede hacer normalmente, o sea, yo me meto un torneo y me meto con el deck, pero yo no me puedo meter con un deck extra, ¿cierto? No. Aquí se pueden usar dos decks y cada uno de los decks tiene side. Uy, va a usar mono rojo.
Specifically, right, we see a turn
Viachinos,
to daños possibility for the Asian Avenger.
De Asian Avenger.
Dealing the 2 damage
Revele su mano y usted descarta carta, listo, descarta el Goblin, sí, de una. Ah, no, el Experiment Frenzy, de una. Adiós el Experiment Frenzy. Adiós el Experimental Frenzy. Adiós, bye, 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 bye. No. Bueno, también, bueno, se fue este, pero por el coste. Pero yo hubiera votado el Experimental Frenzy. Porque igual tengo como matar al Chainer, ¿no? Al Goblin.
With the Braska's Contempt. So just trying to slow down Glogowski here, because if Glogowski doesn't draw a creature here, he's simply just going to have to attack.
Que chanda esos azul control, sí, total, esos azul control, uy, no, pues, o sea, ese es un control tempo. Y eso lo cogen a uno y pim, 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 no lo dejan respirar a uno.
This burn matchup. So the Asian Avenger has a couple of options here. He's actually going to go for Cry of the Carnarium here, but he knows.
Pero voy a poner un poquito más pequeño el chat para que pueda ver las resoluciones. Y si algo ahorita lo agrando si veo más comentarios.
And the Asian Avenger doesn't have an answer for it in hand.
Not currently, so he is going to be hoping
hey, parce, Alejo, estamos en Twitch, por si usted tiene Twitch, para que se suscriba en Twitch. Estamos todo el tiempo, nosotros estamos transmitiendo lo de Magic y estamos jugando Magic todo el tiempo por ahí, entonces, nada, bienvenido. Listo, ¡pum! Adiós el Experimental Frenzy, ya le trabó todo el juego, papá. Todo el juego le trabó.
And Glogowski's going to use the shock here to finish off that Teferi and play another Experimental Frenzy. So, you know, the Asian Avenger really does need to find another answer to the Frenzy.
Needs to find those Mortifiers, needs to find another Teferi, something to keep that enchantment off the board.
Glogowski deciding whether or not to play the land here off the Frenzy, the classic question.
Yeah.
Even currently, I'm not sure what's correct, but it pays off here as he does find a land on top. However, we all know that there's a second copy of Experimental Frenzy on top of his deck.
Goblin Chain Whirler threatening to hit the board, but devious cover-up now from the Asian Avenger, able to put cards back into his deck.
But now we get to see Experimental Frenzy in action. If left unchecked, it will. It's guaranteed to take over the game here. Look at this. Goblin Chain Whirler getting you a card. Fanatical Firebrand getting a card. Getting you a mountain into another Goblin Chain Whirler.
Debe use cover up, counter. Si es countereado, exílio en vez de ponerlo en el cementerio y usted puede poner 4 cartas de su cementerio en su librería. Ush.
Asian Avenger wants to devious cover up.
Devious cover up.
Yeah, and the Asian Avenger is in a lot of trouble here because even if he does find a Mortify or even maybe a Teferi to tuck the Experimental Frenzy, we know that Glogowski has a second copy of Frenzy, so it's going to be extremely difficult for the Asian Avenger to get out of this. He needs to draw multiple powerful effects in a row here, or multiple answers to this Frenzy to come back and win this game.
Finding the cost down though, which is a really good draw for him, allows him to play the attempt as well as the cost down.
Quiere ganar con estilo, creo que lo está haciendo muy mal.
On top, and then we have light up the stage, and by the way, that was an upkeep lightning strike, it looks like.
So the Spectacle cost is active already, which will allow him to cast light up the stage for just 1 mana. Let's see what he finds.
Asian Avenger deciding whether or not he wants to absorb this.
Choke.
Experimental Frenzy.
Oh, and look at this. The hat.
Espectáculo. Exilia las 2 primeras cartas. Resuélvalo. No le hizo el absorb. ¿Por qué no le hizo el absorb? La cagó, hermano. Debió haberle hecho el absorb. Tiene un Braskas, un cast down en la mano y un absorb. No, marica, la cagaste, güey. No, veo otra vez. Light up the stage otra vez. Sí, juegue el absorb. Absórbalo, mano. No hay que pensarlo. Donde usted lo siga pensando, la pierde la partida. Todavía tiene manera de ganarla porque tiene todavía los limpiamesas blancos negros, man. No. 5.
Who needs card advantage? Clearly the controls.
Good game. ¡Sí! ¡Véalo ahí! Destruye todas las criaturas, papá. ¡Ay, qué lindo! ¡Qué lindo es el Magic! ¡Qué lindo, qué lindo!
Wait, we're getting the nices.
Le dio, no.
The hope was, but a fleeting moment.
Wait for it.
What else are you finding?
¡Baila! ¡Oh!
Driving that message home saying, no, I don't care if you kill my
GG, Piotr.
Right.
GG, Piotr.
And I mean, that is the damage of Experimental Frenzy. We've seen this card able to get the mono red deck ahead 3, 4, 5, 7 cards in a matchup. And
you know, crazy.
The whole game, once you stabilize, just revolves around trying to find answers to that Frenzy. And you know, that's another reason why, you know, a lot of the control decks have shifted into playing Esper, because you have access
muy buen juego, la verdad. O sea, estuvo muy bueno, muy interesante. Lo cogió primero con mono azul y después con mono rojo. Hey, Dus, si sigues viendo por ahí, el mono rojo. Por eso le digo que por eso le decía que el otro día que el Experimental Frenzy es quizá una de las mejores cartas que hay ahorita en el metajuego para el mono rojo. Por eso es que debería tener los 4, debería tener los 4 en la baraja, por lo menos 2.
Really excited to see a copy of that into the top 4 and to really just continue to see how it matches up against some of the other decks in the format. You know, it's slightly
ese rojo sí se puede ver, claro que se puede ver, sí, no, pero ¿sabes? Los Experimental Frenzy, es que los Experimental Frenzy lo cogen a usted y pin, 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 y combinado con eso que usted roba, o sea, puede jugar las 2 primeras cartas de la biblioteca hasta el próximo turno, usted empieza pam, 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 como hizo el man al final, no, increíble. Y creo que ahorita es la final, o sea, estas son las semifinales, ahorita es la final del mundo del mítico. ¿Sabe cuánto cuánto se lleva el campeón de Mythic, parce? $250.000. $250.000, marica.
Oh, you did the thing that the kids do. I love it, and you've got your propeller hat on. So you're the only person that
parce,
came
eso es
to
mucha
this
plata.
tournament
$250.000, ¿cuánto es?
How do you
Como
think that's gonna serve
casi
you in the
800
Final
millones de
Four?
pesos colombianos.
That of course depends on what exactly the Final Four will end up looking, but so far I think I just lost one game with my mono blue deck, and it's
Ya consigo unas wildcards para meterlos y un Steam King que me falta. Eso es, ahí tiene, con eso completa. Y sabe que Tun, directico a Mythic, papá, directico a Mythic, para arriba. Ahorita yo creo que después de terminar la transmisión de esto va a jugar un rato, entonces voy a seguir transmitiendo, pero pues voy a jugar yo.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems to be doing especially well against all these Esper controls we're seeing, because you have stuff on the board as well as the removal in hand. Are you at all worried when you put your mono blue up against one of these mono reds or mono whites?
Yeah, like the thing with the Esper decks is that they kind of need to gun
bla 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 bla. Sí, el polaco, fin, ganó. Ya, siga el siguiente juego. Este mundo no es para quedarse haciendo entrevistas, mano.
It's kind of nice to be the person of the spell pierce back then. And against mono colored aggressive decks, you can always pound them a few times with a Tempest Gen, and it sometimes works.
Absolutely. Well, I hope to see your propeller hat keep on spinning as you move into the Final Four. Congratulations. Thanks to you guys at home for staying tuned. We're going to go to a quick word from our partners.
A ver, una rápida palabra de nuestros patrocinadores. $250.000, $250.000 al puto que gane este juego, hermano. $250.000. No, increíble. Eso es mucha plata, eso es mucho dinero, mucho dinero. Mucho dinero. Me voy a un toque de black metal. Boom, boom, boom. Mayo. El 1 de mayo. War of the Spark. Abril 27, el pre-release. Pre-release. ¡Ey, parce! ¡Ey, Dus! Si sigue por ahí viendo, hay un código. Si se mete ya arena, hay un código. Usted ahí donde en la tienda de arena, usted se mete en la tienda donde dice canjear código. Usted le pone Foil Fungus, la palabra Foil Fungus, y le dan una de esas cartas como foil dentro del juego, parce. Una chimba, güey, para que lo haga. Se lo voy a poner en el chat para que vea cómo se estudia. Foil Fungus.
And change is good for us.
And change is good for us. Bueno, mientras empieza, vea, les dejo ahí. Para todo el que nos esté viendo, si se meten ya a arena y se meten a la tienda de arena, entonces ustedes se meten el código que dice Foil Fungus y les dan un hongo foil. Para que tengan, si no tienen su primera carta foil dentro del juego, la tengan.
Yes, Reed Duke going up against Quicksort. This is in lowers. Those players fell down earlier on. And again, these two players have unusual deck lists. I can't remember if Reed Duke was also playing an aggro or control deck alongside the Golgari, but
I believe Reed Duke's lineup is the Golgari Explorer and Mono White, whereas Quicksort
that's right.
is playing the red and the Selesnya tokens.
Selesnya, yeah. And so, I really...
Yeah, we can actually take a look at their deck list, so we can refresh our memories as to the specifics of their inclusions here.
Bueno, Raid Duke juega Golgari negro-verde. Perfecto. Vale, es un deck que explora y mata. Básicamente se basa en los Wild Growth Walker, que son básicamente en lo que se basan los decks verdes del meta en este momento. Tiene los Assassin's Trophy, tiene el Whisperer, el demonio, el 6/6 que por 5 manas que pagas 2 vidas haces Surveil 2. El Carnage Tyrant.
But just that's indicative of the
preparation
is 4 Assassin's Trophy.
Tiene 4 dures.
Zoom in. If you're on a smartphone,
no, tiene dos dures y 2 Brascas Contempt.
Planeswalkers, creatures, enchantments.
A ver, 5 y 9, momento.
It's a very flexible answer.
5, ¿cuántas tierras tiene? 9, 10, 15, 9, 10, 14, 17, 18, 19, 20 tierras.
Yeah, Reed's second deck, a little bit more traditional. The mono
Veterano Loxodon es mono blanco, puro mono blanco. Esto va a estar interesante, va a estar bueno.
In part because it's an evasive creature for the White Mirror match. It's also a creature that survives Goblin Chain Whirler.
That is so important.
In particular, you want to have a lot of cheap creatures so you can activate your Legion's Landing as quickly as possible. And Rustwing Falcon can often just get in there and doesn't get removed
¿qué tiene así interesante? Los guardias quedan indestructibles. Listo, miremos a Quicksort. Juega Selesnya Tokens, uno de los mejores decks que existen en este momento en el meta, que personalmente me gusta mucho el Selesnya Tokens. Y el Venerated Loxodon sirve mucho en el Selesnya Tokens. Las historias de Benalia, 4 clásico, las migraciones de Saprolines, los Tribe Takers, los que dan +1/+1 y el buen mono rojillo, 17 tierras y nada. O sea, juego puro y duro, vea. Choques, Lightning Strike, Light of the Stage, Risk Factor, Wizard's Lighting, los micos que lo sacrifica hace un punto de daño, ¿no? Mejor dicho.
Esper Control is able to actually answer an Experimental Frenzy, whether it's with Mortify or with a Teferi minus ability, or just with a counterspell. Whereas Risk Factor gives you the
Experimental Frenzy dentro del deck, vea, tan curioso.
Of that jumpstart ability
de pronto es muy caro,
to just get in more damage and finish them off. It's a bit weaker, though, against mid-range decks, or against other aggressive decks, because you don't have the explosive potential of really going off with the Experimental Frenzy.
Also really key to note, this is one of these quiet things that I was trying to play mono red. I was trying to become a good ladder player, just grinding up quickly. Skewer the Critics is often a card that players look to reduce in copies in order to squeeze in some more creatures and Experimental Frenzies. So really, this is just all damage, all burn, all across the board. And Quicksort, I think, has had one of the higher success rates with his mono red in this tournament.
Mucha pelata.
Right, we're going to see how this match is going to play out, jumping into the very first game. And it will be that mono red deck from
demasiado dinero el que se gana aquí la persona que gana esto, ¿no? Demasiado dinero.
Now, you generally want 1 Legion's Landing.
You usually don't want 2.
And occasionally, you'll even want to not get 3. And so this is a bit of a painful opening, but really any number of 1-drops to increase the chance of flipping the Legion's Landing.
But more importantly, Quicksort is going first this game. He has run away Steamkin, a very difficult creature for
no puedes bajar Legion's Landing porque es un encantamiento legendario.
That is a absolute disaster for Reed's draw, which is just 1 toughness creatures.
This is a disaster. Oh gosh, it breaks your heart as a white weenie player to just get Chain Whirled right now. Because, I mean, look at this. Now, not only is Reed going to be unable to flip the Legion's Landing, but a 1/1 lifelinker is one of the least sturdy threats to go up against the first strike Chain Whirler.
Not even that, he just lost his creatures he could use to convoke out that Conclave Tribunal to answer the Chain Whirler or the Steamkin. He is unable to answer either of these threats. The Steamkin, aptly named, can very easily run away with the game if it's left unchecked. And right now, it is exactly that.
Man. And I mean, the Goblin Chain Whirler can effectively just chill, always blocking for the rest of the game, and there's not much that the white weenie player can do about it. I mean, certainly you'll have plenty of opportunities to attack with it, but any time that Quicksort decides to slow down,
el Light of the Stage después de haber hecho el daño.
Yeah. I mean, we now have a 4
pero vea, le hubiera quedado para bajar el Steamkin y no lo bajó, y por eso le puede joder el juego, papá.
So I mean, this is a spectacular position.
But this block from Reed Duke is pretty important because it does mean that if Quicksort chooses to activate the mana ability of the Steamkin, or rather the ability to remove counters and add mana, it will become a 1/1 and then die.
Right.
So that doesn't allow Quicksort to use that to play additional spells this turn. So no dumping those counters off to play the second Steamkin in the Lava Runner. It will remain a 4/4.
Now, this is a very interesting spot to be in for Reed. There's the Banalish Marshal and History Benalia, which are real big power cards, but without a third planes, you can't cast them, but do you want to swing in with the life
Pero eso lo dejaría abierto un
It'll be
golpe
nice
de
to gain some
5 y
health against
teniendo en
red, and
cuenta
we'll flip the
que
Legion's
tiene
Landing.
el otro bicho con rapidez a un golpe de con prisa a un golpe de 7.
So even flipping the Legion's Landing
Porque ya
here,
debe
what does he
tener
follow that
más
up
de
with?
4
He can't
hechizos
play
en el
Conclave
cementerio.
Tribunal. He could play History Benalia, but that's just 1/2/2, and his opponent has 9 power on the board with cards in hand.
No
and the reason that Reed is taking so long to think right now is there's not that many options on this turn, but the choices here are going to have a lot of consequences for the next few turns. And then you have to start doing a little bit of math about, okay, well, how much damage am I going to take if the Runaway Steamkin starts to burn off mana to deal more face damage to me? Okay, well, my opponent's only going to have 3 cards.
Oh, but that's a second Chain Whirler.
Oh, Chain Whirler en tu cara. Chain Whirler en tu cara.
This is one of the reasons that a lot of players felt like, while Mono White is a powerful deck, it can be very vulnerable, particularly if you're going to those third game situations where you can't really risk getting your white deck against a Chain Whirler, right? And we just saw these Chain Whirlers.
3-7 pasaron 9.
Still,
Cuando yo pensé que iban a pasar 7, le queda este
Reed's
turno.
entire board and leaving him in a position where he has so little that Quicksort is just going to run him over and Reed Duke with the well-mannered good game into a concession.
Sí, concedió.
Quicksort, well played, but I mean, it's one of these things where when you build a lot of aggressive decks, it often is how you set yourself up in those first few turns, and when you have a bunch of 1/1s against a Chain Whirler, it's rough.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, there are a lot of key cards in the white deck that can get you out of range of that, whether you have Banalish Marshal that comes down quickly, whether you have Venerated Loxodon, but importantly, Quicksort, he went first that game. He was able to play that Chain Whirler before Banalish Marshal could possibly come down, before Reed had an opportunity to convoke those creatures with a Venerated Loxodon.
Yeah, and I mean, if you
Vamos a ver cómo va el segundo juego después de que le metan el
side.
side.
To just say, oh, Chain Whirler is just the easy straight-up hard counter, but this is also part of the reason why coming into this event, you have a lot of people running Dauntless Bodyguards, which you can sack to try to keep another one of your creatures up, the Rustwing Falcon that you mentioned. We've seen some of the lists run 4 Rustwing Falcons just to increase the probability that there's 1-drops that can survive through that. Hunted Witness, 4 copies of in almost every single deck, because when it dies, a 1/1 lifelinker is created. And I feel like that was just one of those agonizing spots where you feel obligated to keep your opening hand because you can probably flip the Legion's Landing, but it's because you have multiple Legion Landing in your hand, which is the most fragile opening.
Well, and so many of your draws just line up so poorly against Chain Whirler anyway. In some cases, you're just like, well, I have a good draw for Legion's Landing as long as they don't Chain Whirler me, and got it, they don't. So we're going to go into the next game here, where we will be seeing the Selesnya Tokens deck against Reed Duke's Golgari Explorer. These are the sort of more unusual decks we haven't seen quite as much over the course of this tournament. And Reed Duke, kind of an awkward hand here. He has this Field of Ruin and 2 copies of Assassin's Trophy. Assassin's Trophy is fantastic at removing big, powerful permanents, like, say, a Teferi, or your opponent's Ixalan Binding on one of your creatures. It's terrible against a token deck.
It is the opposite of what you want, especially given that March of the Multitudes has that beautiful X in the mana cost. Every single land that you provide additionally kind of winds up backfiring a little bit. And typically what you'd want to say in Reed's spot is, well, I'll have Wild Growth Walkers, I'll have my early Explore creatures help give me a stable board. But you can see how long Reed is spending going through these lines. Do I keep the Ravenous Chupacabra? Do I chuck it back?
Yeah, Reed
and I chuck it back.
Really needs to find a green source to play this Jade Light. He does. So the Woodland Cemetery will at least enable this Jade Light Ranger so he can get a bit of smoothing of his draw, potentially a decent threat in play. Duress is awkward. Duress is a card that there are a lot of decent spells, like March of the Multitudes, Conclave Tribunal, Saproling Migration, that you can hit with it. However, Reed's in a position where I feel like he needs more action. He needs to find Finality. He needs to find a Carnage Tyrant that can actually be a threat, so Quicksort doesn't just have essentially unlimited time to set up his token generators and buff spells.
I feel like that's such a key analysis you bring up. Duress, yes, it will literally, in a vacuum, do something negative to Quicksort's hand. It will remove a March of the Multitudes or a Tribunal or a Sapperling Vibration.
La marcha de multitudes, vamos a ver.
Sapperling Vibration. Uh-oh, the 1/1s are wiggling. Not a strong spell.
That's their dance, like when they win. Sapperling Vibration. Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's a reason that I don't work in R&D. So, I mean, with these types of threats that you can remove, it might feel like Duress is good, but I mean, look at this position. This is exactly why you put Duress in the graveyard. You want bigger, stronger ways to deal with a board that's continuing to grow.
And you know, Reed does find that fine finality, but now this is turn 3, by the way, for Quicksort here, where he has the Sapperlings going crazy. Oh, actually, no, sorry, it is his 4th turn. I believe he went first. No, he went first in this game. Never mind. Reed went first this game. So yes, so this is the 3rd turn. This explosive
thing is that this is a lot of stuff, Brian.
Yeah, that's my point. There's a lot of things in play.
Whew. And then
with the 4th turn. I was right the first time.
You know what? Always trust everything that comes out of your mouth. So in this spot, I feel like if you're Reed, I mean, you're just kind of looking for any way to make the game go on longer. Sacking Field of Ruin to try to destroy
la tierra no básica, no, los cogieron y se la metió con el Loxodon, se la metió con el Loxodon.
So Quicksort going to be at the same amount of land, but very important for Reed. He's thinning his deck to get answers. Quicksort in a dominant position though.
And also crucially, Reed doesn't lose a land for this. Unlike something like Tectonic Edge, some of the previous land removal cards that have existed in Magic, it doesn't shut anyone out of land, so Reed will still have his land to be on pace to cast that finality. The problem is, does he have time? You know, he has fine finality. He has
mames el Loxodon, mames el Loxodon.
So much damage here. He's taking, it looks like 10, I believe, from this attack. That's half his life.
I mean, maybe you Assassin's Trophy to kill the venerated Loxapal.
I love this play from Reed. He's using, he's blocking. Oh no, he's actually Assassin's Trophy his own creature, or rather the Loxodon. I was thinking Reed might block an Assassin's Trophy his own creature to enable finality on his turn. Oh, is it opponent's?
Oh, yeah, it's opponent controls.
Never mind. Just kidding.
Well, I mean, David
I thought I was clever, then realized, well, you realized that I was wrong.
Well, I mean, that's the fact of the matter is that there's just so much content in the game, you know, to like just keep track of all the things, which is why a lot of these situations wind up being so tough. And it looks like this is going to be a really nice sequence for Reed. Yes, Reed did provide an extra land. March of the Multitudes can be a bit of a pain in a spot like this, but there's a finality in hand. Do you think Quicksort plays around it here?
It's interesting because Quicksort's board is still pretty good. He doesn't quite have the ability to push for lethal overturns. I don't like playing Trostani now because it does walk right into Find Finality. I think we may see him just say go here and fire off March of the Multitudes, or play the Tribunal and just attack for damage. Because he plays Conclave Tribunal on the Seeker Squire, he gets in half of Reed's life total. And then the next turn, he has the ability to just, you know, again, attack for lethal. He doesn't actually expose any more important cards to a finality, which is what Reed needs to cast next turn anyway.
Yeah.
Or else he's going to die to the following attack unless he has, you know, another
pegan 7.
You can also Assassin's Trophy on the Assassin's Trophy pegan 5. Which will bring the Seeker Squire back. You get another opportunity to explore. You could potentially have a blocker for a 2/2 and stall the use of the finality a little more. It looks like Reed is going to make that choice, which is, again, the versatility of Assassin's Trophy. But, again, March of the Multitudes has an X in the cost. Kind of giving a little bit more fuel.
He would Reed would have loved to actually hit a non-land here, I think, to get a 2/3, so he could actually hold on against these Sapperlings. Instead, he just had to kill the 1/1. Now down to 8 life, and only has the 1/2 in play, so still needs an answer. Finds another land. It is Memorial to Folly, so it is a land that has some utility, but he needs an impactful effect now because he is very far behind. He may just have to, fire off this finality here.
Wow.
Oh, no, he's firing off Find. Okay.
Wow, he's finding. All right.
Interesting. All right. No, I like this.
Jade Light it does. Yep.
Because if he fires off Finality here, he's not actually making any real headway. He does obviously kill the tokens, but doesn't progress the game.
Luego explora de nuevo.
Well, you sure are late to the party, buddy.
Yeah, this is interesting because, you know, the Carnage Tyrant will, of course, be quite powerful at blocking small creatures, or giving him a way to punch through. But now he has no way to clear a big board, right? If Trostani comes down, if March is the Multitude, March doesn't really have an answer for anyway. But Trostani here, this makes his life really difficult.
Quicksort is just in firm command of this match. I mean, at this point, it's hard to make weak decisions as Quicksort. Yeah, there's probably a best decision to be made, but playing the Tristani to swing in for lethal forces some blockers, is going to force an exchange, and yeah, probably have to chump block the 3-3. This is a great attack from Quicksort.
And now Reed's in a position where he just needs to finality again, and there's a Carnage Tyrant on top of his deck. So I mean, he used the find last turn in order to dig himself out of the hole, but it didn't deal with the Tristani sort of backing up that board.
Puede bajar el Carnage o puede bajar el Ravenous Chupacabra.
But he's at 5. Even if he Ravenous Chupacabras, he can kill the Tristani. So there's 2 2/2s and 2 1/1s. That means any buff effect will kill him. And we see Flower Flourish is actually waiting in Quicksort's hand.
I mean, Quicksort just has all the answers. Not only running all those Flower Flourishes for the buff, but there's unbreakable formations in the deck. I mean, there is a ton of ways to break through. And look at this. This is such a smart way to hedge right when the Ravenous Chupacabra is going to be killing this Tristani. Oh, okay, never mind.
Yeah, he could have cast March of the Multitudes there for 3, or rather for 2, thanks to the Convoke cost. That would have given him additional bodies to help the Flourish get through. Even if there was, for instance, a Assassin's Trophy, he would still have lethal damage. I think he might anyway.
Yeah, with the Flourish.
Even with a removal spell. No, he could have Assassin's Trophy into chump block, which would give, would prevent lethal. But here, he does not have anything. And it will be Quicksort's Selesnya token deck taking down Reed Duke and knocking him out of the tournament in the top 16.
I mean, that is a huge victory for Quicksort. We saw Quicksort just cruise into the top 16. Notably, that mono red deck that Quicksort's been using is a weird list.
Va a transmitir hasta aquí porque ya me dio pereza seguir transmitiendo más bien. Ahorita más rato va a transmitir yo jugando porque ya me dio aburrida jugar a otros y no jugar yo, man. La gracia es jugar uno.
And it's just, please draw an Experimental Frenzy. And also, please don't have a counter spell. I mean, the more proactive game plan focused deck from Quicksorts have just been doing fantastic.